Hi, everybody. How are you all doing today?
Right.
Good to see you again. I wanted to talk today about fear as a messenger, a hypnotic pathway to healing. I know that we all have had clients come in experiencing some form of fear. All of us have. Everyone's familiar with this experience. So I want to start this conversation out with a question. What if fear isn't the problem? What if fear is actually the messenger? We sit with this issue all the time. It comes into the room in many different forms. It could be a fear of flying, fear of the dentist, fear of public speaking, fear of driving, fear of snakes, spiders, you name it. Kelly's eyes bugged there.
Rats.
Rats. Yeah, so sometimes we've got this really obvious fear, but sometimes it's a little more hidden. It can show up like a procrastination, avoidance, overthinking, perfectionism and people pleasing, and even self-sabotage.
Ooh,
I
that
remember,
overthinking is a big one.
yeah, yeah, right away at the very beginning of my practice, I was able to really pick out the self-sabotage and these underlying fear issues. Those are always just easy for me to see. And what the client, often believes is the issue is actually just fear wearing a different mask. So, one of the most important reframes in this work is that fear is rarely the enemy. We know that when we do parts work. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Fear is usually trying to help. Fear, subconscious mind doesn't create fear randomly, it creates fear in service of protection. And I can't think of any case that that has ever not been true. Have you ladies ever encountered a situation where fear was not the protection mode?
No, in fact, I had a session today, and it was all about I'm scared, I'm having surgery. I don't know how to get over it. I've had surgeries before. I've never been scared, but now I'm scared. And when we got into it, that that wasn't really the issue. There was many other things that were surfacing, and yes, fear was absolutely the messenger in this case.
Yeah. So even when the response feels irrational in the present, there's almost always a part of the mind that believes it's doing something very important. It's keeping the client safe, preventing them from pain, avoiding rejection, avoiding loss of control, or protecting them from repeating something that once hurt them deeply. And sometimes fear is simply protecting the client from change itself. I've been stuck in this loop before. Anybody recognize that loop? Protecting you from change, period. Because even positive change can feel unsafe to the nervous system. So when we begin to see fear in this way, our role shifts. We're not trying to eliminate fear. I mean, I know that's what clients will come in with. I just want this to be gone. And it seems to me that the harder we try to push it away, the more it strengthens and just gets in its role stronger, more entrenched, even deeper. So I love when we do hypnosis for fear. Um, it just is the softer way. We don't want to try to eliminate it. We want to learn how to understand it and work with it and guide the subconscious towards something that feels safer. So, one of the most common protocols that we use is hypnotic desensitization. It's beautiful for situational fears like dental anxiety. I'm going to have to put myself in, hypnotize myself for a few weeks. I've got a dental process coming up, and that always fills me with some anxiety. Medical procedures, flying, interviews, or any anticipated event that causes fear or anxiety or nervousness or tension in the body. So we want to guide that client into a deeply relaxed state first, allowing the body to experience safety. And then we introduce the feared situation in manageable steps. Thinking about it, seeing themselves arrive there, moving through the experience successfully. And then what happens is the subconscious begins to form a new association. Instead of fear or alarm, it starts to pair the experience with calm and control. So, who uses this method? I don't use this often. I use other methods more often, but who uses desensitization?
I haven't used it in years because I have other things that I use way more often.
I have used that. You guys remember the good old-fashioned swish technique?
Mm-hmm.
I tend to use that and or art of deliberate focus, redirect.
I generally use the swish, yeah.
Mhm.
I find sending love to the fear is highly effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also reminding yourself too, this is the redirect though, or the reframe, that there's usually growth on the other side of fear. Is hearkening a growth moment.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about that in a little while. You're right on track. Yeah, exactly. So desensitization is a good method, uh, to get people on the other side of a particular thing. So I'm going to use this for my dental experience that I have coming up. I think this will just be easy for me to focus on in within my own mind. Another powerful approach that we can do is regression work. We can have the client go back to the original sensitizing event and use that affect bridge of emotions to bridge them back into their earlier life at a time they felt unsafe or somewhere in their childhood, sometime when they felt loss of control or had some rejection. And then once we find the origin, we can begin to reframe it and update the meaning that the subconscious has been holding on to. So I don't necessarily think somebody comes in and I think, oh, they're unsafe, let's do a regression, but regression does often eliminate a lot of fears. I know Kelly uses regression therapy
Yeah.
quite a bit. Mm-hmm.
Past life too for fear.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you can do all these techniques and it's rooted in cellular memory. So you got to go there to really clear it. Yeah.
We have so many beautiful techniques to available at our fingertips for these. It's sometimes hard to decide which one to start with. One of my favorite ways, really truly, to work through fear is doing parts work, parts therapy, because fear is so often the protective part. And instead of trying to override it, we become curious about what it's doing. What is it trying to protect? What does it need? What is it afraid of would happen if it stopped doing its job? And what's beautiful here is that those parts almost always have a positive intention. They are trying to help. And usually when they feel heard, they often will soften, and then we can guide them toward a safer, more supportive role in the client's life. And that parts work is just easy to flip into from anything that you're doing. I've found it's a good pivot.
Mm-hmm.
I just spent the last 2 weekends teaching parts therapy and strength-based parts. It's my favorite approach for so many things.
Easy peasy.
Mm-hmm.
It's right to the root of things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so
Yeah.
easy. Bring in the part that makes you fear of X.
Right.
You're off to the races. That's it. Talk about cutting to the chase, right?
Yeah, it's a simple but profoundly changing process. Simple to do. And then if we have some fears around upcoming experiences, we can do future pacing. I use future pacing in every session, no matter what, but you can specifically use it for things coming up. Rehearsals in trance. So take them through this experience with calm, confidence, regulation, whatever it is that their goals would be, how they wish to feel in their future experience coming up. And then the subconscious will accept that version as familiar and possible and just keep rehearsing that in your mind. You can even do that just in regular thought. Doesn't even have to be in a state of hypnosis. You can just do that with regular thought. You keep programming that in. A long time ago, I took a self-defense class. My daughter and I both did. And the gentleman that was teaching the class said, "You always, always, always," he said, "I want you to run through these scenarios of being in a dangerous situation, and you always escape because your inner mind needs to know you always get away." So I've never forgotten that. That was something I learned a really long time ago. You're just, you know, the body will follow. The body will follow, and it's prepared to be able to move through any situation that you rehearse ahead of time. And then Kelly brought it up earlier, but this is something that feels really important for our association because fear can have a spiritual dimension. Sometimes fear shows up right at the very edge of expansion. That's what Kelly was talking about a little while ago. Right before healing, right before visibility, right before you're stepping into your purpose. And in those moments, fear might not be telling us to stop, but it might be showing us exactly where growth is asking to happen. Sometimes fear isn't the barrier, it is the doorway. And when you ask it, "What are you here to teach me? What are you protecting? What part of me is ready to heal?" If you can develop a curiosity for it instead of trying to make it go away, you can have the ability to move into the next experience that you need to have. Do you want to say some more about that, Kelly? You said it very well earlier.
Well, what drove this point home for me was I was watching Will Smith on Instagram, and he's a pretty motivational guy, and accomplished a lot in his life. And he had a bucket list that he decided he was going to check, do this whole list of bucket list events before he exited this lifetime. And he was talking about how he was on a plane getting ready to jump out of a very perfectly good plane, parachuting out, and he said he was scared out of his mind. And the count from 3 to 1 when you're jumping tandem with an instructor says you were at the peak of fear, yet right when you cross over that threshold, you experience the greatest beautiful moment that you can ever imagine
I'm
because
going to
you
say that's not
stared
true.
down your fear.
I did it. I don't feel that way.
Oh, okay. Well, damn, you just ruined my little vision.
Keep going, keep
But
going. Maybe I'll take it in and change my
yeah, that wasn't
inner
your experience.
landscape.
Everybody's different. Everybody's different. But he was saying that at the maximum amount of fear, and then just a split second later, it was just bliss. He crossed over bliss, and it was from having stared down his fear and the beauty that his whole message was the beauty that lives on the other side of fear. And a lot of times that's why it's showing up so that you can appreciate the maximum beauty that life has to offer when you cross through that threshold.
Yeah.
Sorry, that wasn't the case for you, Melissa.
No, I still have PTSD. Never gonna skydive again.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe some past life stuff.
I don't know.
Maybe it's,
That's interesting. So you
well,
jumped out the plane, petrified the whole way down, and then got down and said, "I will never do that again. Why did I do
Yeah.
that?"
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's real too.
I shut off everything that I had that told me not to do that.
Oh,
And then, you can't tell from the pictures. I look like I'm having a great time. And
but you
then,
had warning signs the whole time. I shouldn't be doing this, and you did it anyway. And then,
yeah.
oh wow.
Well, I
Okay.
just kind of dimmed all of my, you know, safety mechanisms.
So you didn't try to understand the fear. You kind of said, "Oh, I'm going to ignore the fear."
Yeah.
What
We need to
happened?
go and do a parts work on what that was
Yeah.
that you jumped out of that plane when you had all those red flags firing off. That's the
Well,
parts work we're gonna do for you.
one of my friends wanted to go for her birthday, and I was like, "All right, I'll go with you." But, I could see her, she was starting to change her mind because you have to sign 100 pieces of paper that you won't sue them
Right,
if you die.
right.
Got to sign your life away. all the
Mhm.
bad things that could happen. So it's pretty in your face about what could go wrong here. And then she's starting to get all pale, and I can see her. She's going to change her mind. And I was like, oh, no, 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 we're here. We're getting on the plane. So I think if I had just been there by myself, I would have been like, oh, you know what? Never mind. But I was proving a point to somebody. And I just
Wow.
shut down all of the things that said, don't do that. And then, you know, at some point, it's just too late. You're out of the plane and you're in the air now.
Mhm.
And then the chute pulled, and I was like, okay, good, that happened. And then I started to freak out. So,
Because then you're thinking about all the things that could have gone wrong, right?
right, right.
Well, this is a great example of how fear can show up for different reasons for different people. So there's not a one answer to it all, right? For some, this works, for others, that works, but
Hmm.
it's a signal, it's a small signal for something.
Right,
What
right.
about Melissa, fear as it relates to the ego? Because a lot of times spiritually, what I get is that fear is not real, it's produced by your ego, which lives from your past experience. Which, if we, and we're going to talk about mindfulness in another podcast episode, that, it only exists if you give it attention and focus. So, what do you think about the ego as it relates to fear?
Well, it can really only go backwards, as you said, and it has to filter through all of your past experiences. Now, I didn't have any past experiences to jump out of an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
I do now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doing it again. I learned my lesson.
I meant, though, generally about ego. Ego being the responsible party for fear.
Well, sure, because if you were really following your inner self, your soul guides everything, all of your experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and even the difficult ones are there for a purpose. And if you just listen to that inner guidance and that inner wisdom, nothing should be scary. It's all there for a reason, and you know you're going to be okay.
Right.
So ego steps in to go, no, no,
Danger,
we don't
Will
want to,
Robinson. Go
yeah,
back.
we don't want to change that.
Mhm.
We don't want to expand. What if we lose everybody from our expansion? What if something too drastic changes? Yeah, so the ego does get in the way.
Well, I'll take ego stopping me from jumping out of a plane any day of the week. Not doing
With
that.
Catherine.
No, no. Nor am I doing the Ferris wheel at the fair. No, no. I'm
Oh, the
staying on
Ferris
the
wheel is
ground.
the
Staying on the
devil.
ground. Mm-mm,
Yeah, that's
mm-mm. No.
and
Well,
I would think the whole time you're thinking, I voluntarily got up here.
I did it once in high school, and that was enough of that.
Have they ever stopped it at the top and you're like thinking,
Which is
I
probably why I
chose
said,
this. I made
yeah,
this
yeah,
horrible decision.
never
Yeah.
again.
well, I think, I learned something that day,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that first of all, I am able to squash down anything that I want to accomplish something I want. That doesn't mean I didn't pay the price for it when I got back on the ground. I had a few days of PTSD. I would think about jumping out of that plane and just my body would go,
Mm-hmm. That was a
So
hard no for you.
that was a hard no.
What
Yeah.
about as it relates to intuition, the difference between fear and
Mm.
intuition?
Yeah,
There's a difference, right?
there's a huge difference. Most people recognize in their body they have a signal that says no. And I think most people understand when the signal says no and they do it anyway, there's a negative consequence almost always. Or they say, I wish I had listened to that. Yes, you
Yep.
always. So the no is almost always recognizable to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
The yes is a little harder, but I'm going to bring it up in case anybody wants to go look at it a little bit. I study human design, I teach human design, and there are ways that you can understand yourself that offer a very much clearer way to hear your yeses. So that can be learned and that can be practiced and that can be a little easier to understand. So once you get your yes and once you get your no, fear is a different sort of energy. Really, you only need your yes or your no.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is a signal that something is maybe being blocked or you're being, there's something in the system that's not working well for you, I think, when you feel that fear signal. What do you think about that, ladies?
Mm, that makes sense. I think Tom Cruise must have really cleared his fear signals. It seems like he'll do just about anything.
He does. Yeah. We just watched
Yeah,
him one of the Mission Impossibles last night. Yes, that guy will do anything.
yes,
Love those movies. Love them.
yes,
Very exciting.
He still does all of his stunts.
he does. I think his recent one was he held his breath for like 5 minutes underwater. I didn't know that was possible.
You have to work
Apparently
up
it
to it, but
is.
those free divers, that's how they learn they build that up. Hmm.
Mm,
Yep. With spear divers, free diving.
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. They build their lung capacity up to be able to do that. So I'm
And
sure he
then
went into some training for that.
there's a difference. Let's talk about that too, because that's just sparked me to this came in. Like your body is definitely going to tell you when something is dangerous.
Hmm.
So if you are not comfortable with being under the water and you're going to try to go under there and hold your breath under the water, your body's going to go, oh, whoa, 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 no, no, no. Things like that, we can trust our body to get us out of dangerous situations where the body's going to expire. We
Hmm.
can trust it. We don't have to be scared of things. We can have great discernment of things instead. I think that's the ideal response is discernment. But the body isn't going to let you do anything that it's going to die. It'll get you out of that lickety split.
Hmm.
So we don't have to listen to the ego fear. We've got mechanisms in place that will help us move through situations much more smoothly. If we know the signals and we can pay attention and we do what our body is compelling us to do.
Yeah.
Well, there's the key right there if we're paying attention and then acting on the information that's there.
Hmm.
Every time I'm going to take a trip somewhere, I spend weeks thinking, if you weren't going on this trip, you could just stay home with your books and your blanket. You could be doing your regular, normal, everyday things. And then the day of the trip, after I've done that to myself for weeks, the day of the trip, I will wake up and I'll think, I'm so glad I'm going somewhere. Really, really annoying.
That's a real thing. That's what I experience when I'm packing to go someplace. And I procrastinate in such a bad way. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I going? Why am I? Because this takes so much. And then I have to decide because you can only bring X amount of things. And what if I'm making a mistake and I don't pack correctly? So that prolongs the whole process. And then my closet gets turned upside down, room gets turned upside down. It's a whole bad scene.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then I overpack.
I'm glad to know this before I head out with you ladies and to go to Las Vegas.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so far out, I'm still not, I'm not yet anxious and wondering why I said I would do this. But give me a couple more months and I'll get there.
We're going to Hypno Thoughts Live, everybody. If y'all want to show up and support us,
Mhm.
we're going to have a table.
July.
Yeah, in July. It's going to be awesome. So
Yes, it is.
We're all gonna come with bags under our eyes.
Seriously.
We're exhausted by the time we get there because
Yeah.
all it took to get ready.
Well,
Mhm.
my little bugaboo about this particular trip was how I was going to get from the airport to the hotel
Mhm.
because I didn't really want to do an Uber or a Lyft. I wanted to get a shuttle. That's what I had in my mind. I was going to get a shuttle, and the hotel is not offering a shuttle. So then got to go to plan B, and I don't want the plans B, C, or D. I wanted my plan A. I don't know why that's what I needed to have, but that's what my little anxiety about the trip has been, and it's going to work out fine.
It
Mhm.
is. It is. Yep. Mm.
Because you're a planner.
Right. See, my brain is trying to solve my future problems for me. Nothing good happens when you get up
Yeah,
here trying to solve your
so
future problems.
so how about that you and Catherine are very uber organized? Is that a byproduct of fear?
Well, if you can at least, I mean, if you can prevent as many disasters from happening along the
Right,
way, I
exactly,
mean,
right? Isn't that an aspect of fear?
sure
So
it
you
is.
But
have
I
to
would,
exhaust all possibilities so that you're not left with the unexpected.
well, I would be more likely to say I'm organized because I'm a Virgo. And, and with my personality, first I say it and then I do it. And I'm going to do all of it because I said I was going to do it. And I don't want to be, maybe it is fear. I don't want to be embarrassed because, well, you said you're going to do that. What do you mean you didn't do it? So,
I do all of those things too, Catherine.
okay.
I'm
Yeah, and she's a Scorpio. She's a Scorpio like me and like
Mhm.
Yvonne. So, but you very much have Virgo tendencies,
I do.
Melissa.
Yeah,
You and Catherine are
Kevin and I
just,
are
I'm
very
very
similar.
afraid of both of
Yeah.
you.
Well, we should, no, we should look at her chart because if her son's in the natural house of Virgo, then that would bring in an element of Virgo. Plus, you
Mm.
might have your progressed sun might be in
Mm.
Virgo. You might have a progressed moon in Virgo. It would be interesting to delve into that and see because that's what makes everything make sense to me is looking at for you it's human design, for me it's
Mhm.
astrology. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we all have these little tiny degrees of fear.
Mhm.
we
What
do.
comes to mind though is this, if you don't mind me sharing. I did a past life regression. No, I did a age regression on my best friend Deb, who's a Virgo, very uber organized. Again, I get very fascinated with the fact of all these Virgos. I attract very organized people, and I just fly by the seat of my pants. So it's a very interesting dynamic. But I took her into age regression, and it took her back to when she was like 5 years old, and her mother and brother were ganging up on her, and she said, "I'm leaving." Her mother said, "I'll help you pack your bag." And so she, at 5, packed her bag and she walked down the street and got about halfway down the block. Now, this is a 5-year-old, and realized that she was not prepared for this decision because her mother told her, "You can't come back." Of course, she was teaching her a lesson, right? And so that imprint that she made this decision without a plan B
Mm.
petrified her. And it drives all of her need to keep all the balls in the air. And I never forget the part that made her feel like she couldn't drop a ball was named Sunshine. It kept her up at night, drove her insomnia because she couldn't drop a ball. Sunshine was not going to let her be unsafe and leave her without plan A, B, C, or D so that she could not get back to where she needs to be so she can be safe. So that's an aspect of fear. That's why I was asking. Different for everybody though.
It is.
That's
But
a really good
interesting, right?
example, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, fear is out there everywhere. A few cycles back, I talked about fear as thought forms and the fact that we have a lot of energy on this planet of fear, and we're very good at creating out of fear. So we're working. Most people I know are working on how to switch out of that and move into their heart space and use the love energy more. So, but it's just something that we have to deal with. It's just part of our daily existence, but we're working our way out of that now. It's going to take a little while, but we're on the way.
We can do it.
We can do it.
We
We're doing
can
it.
do
We
it.
are doing it. That's right.
Well, thanks everybody for chatting with me about how fear shows up in your practice and what you do about it.
Thank
There's
you,
many,
Melissa.
many, many ways to deal with fear. You just heard a whole
Mhm.
bundle of them. We'd love for people to comment about the best ways their favorite ways in their
Mhm.
practice.
Mhm.
And what you've learned from fear as you face it. That might
Mhm.
be some interesting comments that we
Mm-hmm.
can go through.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that'd be great and
Would love
welcome.
that.
Thank you, Melissa. Lots of good food for thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.
See you next
Till
time.
next time.